He and I were like childhood sweethearts. So I met him when I was 13.
Nice. Wow.
All right, you
Okay.
ready? Okay. Hey, this is Jordan Hill with Dirt to Sky Business Podcast. And I would like to thank SMI Real Estate and Saltwater Wellness for sponsoring this episode. I am so excited to be here today with kind of a legend
Salem.
here in Oregon, from Oregon.
Yeah.
This is Bob Dalton. How are you today?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Good, absolutely. Thanks for taking the time. I know you're on basically a tour almost
Yeah.
right
I'm
now.
traveling around the country right now.
Yeah.
Living out of my suitcase for the next 4
Heck
months.
yeah. Well, I would love for everyone to hear who you are and your journey thus far. I know you started out by founding a different company and what it is that you just launched.
Yeah. So I started my first company, Sackcloth Ashes, out here in Monmouth, Oregon. And the concept of that company was inspired by my mom, who ended up living on the streets. And when she fell on the hard times and went through that journey, it inspired me to call homeless shelters and see what they needed. And they said blankets.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I started calling homeless shelters in this area to see what they needed. And they said blankets. And I came up with the idea that for every blanket that we sell, we'll donate a blanket to a homeless shelter. And that quickly evolved into local homeless shelters because there's homeless shelters all around the United States. And I thought it would be cool to allow people to buy a product from us, and then we send a blanket to a homeless shelter in their community.
Mm-hmm.
And so started with a sewing machine and a roll of fabric from Joann's
Yeah.
and bootstrapped it. I had a local seamstress here in Dallas, Oregon, started making blankets for me named Tammy.
Uh-huh.
And we would hand fray all the labels, and I started selling blankets out of my trunk and
Wow.
driving up and down the Oregon coast and walking into shops and being like, here's why you should buy these blankets over the blankets on your shelf, because I'll donate a blanket to your local homeless shelter for every
Yeah.
blanket that you purchase.
Uh-huh.
And that's how we got started. I named the company Sackcloth Ashes. It's ancient Jewish symbolism, which means mourning and repentance. And so the concept was every time somebody wraps themselves in a blanket, it symbolizes mourning over the homeless population and repentance by contributing to a shelter in their area.
Yeah.
So bootstrapped it, in the early stages. This was June of 2014.
Mm-hmm.
And we had 2 huge breaks early on. I walked into Anthropology in Portland with a box of blankets and was like, would you guys like to buy blankets? And they were like,
Yeah.
it doesn't really work like this. So I left a blanket and a business card with them. They emailed me and the corporate Anthro team came through that week.
Oh my gosh.
And they looked up my business card and they were like, hey, they emailed me and they're like, we'll take 8,000 blankets.
Oh my gosh.
And that was like the first crazy moment where I was like, wow, this actually could work.
Yeah.
And then 5 months into it, I got an email from Instagram and they were like, hey, we love your story. We love what you're doing. We want to feature you on Instagram's Instagram account.
Oh my gosh.
And at the time they had 42 million followers and they posted about us the day before Black Friday and it blew us up. So that's how Sackcloth and Ashes started in Monmouth, Oregon, just selling blankets, to local mom and pop shops. And then within the first 6 months, we were known all over the world. And that was like the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey.
That's a beautiful story. And that is absolutely amazing. And I'm just curious, so you have, I mean, this company, Sackcloth and Ashes, is still in full swing. And now you have started something new and it's very different from sackcloth and ashes.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And
Yeah.
what kind of inspired you to, I would love to hear what it is. I would love to hear more about the project that you're on now. I'll let you talk about it. And what inspired you to do something so different from your other company?
Yeah. So Sackcloth's actually located here in Salem. We have a warehouse and we, started donating blankets to a bunch of different homeless shelters around the United States. And as the company started growing, I started doing blanket drops and visiting homeless shelters and programs around the US and doing, passing out blankets in person at these shelters and getting a firsthand look at what solutions were being created to help the homeless issue. So for the last 5 years, I jumped around to 50 different cities, met with the local leaders and people
Wow.
that solutionists, people
Mhm.
that were showing up day in and day out to address this particular issue. And so I got a really good bird's eye view of what's working and what's not working when it comes to how we're approaching the issue of homelessness. Right now,
Right.
we're dumping billions of dollars into these issues that are continuing to get worse.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get to the heart of it. Like,
Uh-huh.
why is this an issue that feels so rapidly out of control?
Mhm.
Um, but on that journey, it changed my life
Mhm.
because I met the most amazing people that were fully dedicated to serving their communities.
Mhm.
And it inspired me to start looking into the philosophy of localism.
Mhm.
And I became more and more convinced that if we're going to see real sustainable change, it has to be done on a local level.
Yeah.
And when I looked into localism, you have individualism, localism, nationalism, globalism. And out of those four, localism has not even been in the conversation.
Wow.
And it was only 200 years ago
Mhm.
that people didn't travel or communicate outside of a 20-mile radius.
Mm.
So I
Yeah.
made the decision that for the rest of my life, I'm going to dedicate my career to helping reintegrate localism back into modern society
Mhm.
and bring an emphasis on local impact, local strategy, local solutions is going to be the most effective way to solving societal issues.
Mhm.
And started giving keynote messages on local impact and talking a lot about it for the last couple years. But donating blankets to homeless shelters is an admirable thing, but it's not helping reintegrate localism back into modern
Yeah.
society. And so I
Mhm.
started asking the question, how can I use my skill set, my background, my experience to help with that on a bigger level?
Mhm.
And I've always been a student of communication, and I grew up in the era of social networking. I was in junior high and high school when MSN Messenger, MySpace, and
Oh, yeah.
Facebook came onto the scene. And the goal of social networking was we want to help you stay more connected to the people in your life when you're not with them.
Right.
And it started off great.
Mhm.
And then by about 2012 to 2014, social networking had completely died off and it
Mhm.
evolved into social media. And
Yeah.
in social media, connectivity was no longer the goal, it was content. So this
Mhm.
last decade has been about content.
Yeah.
And so I grew up in social networking and then I built my brand, Sackcloth, during the decade of content and
Mhm.
social media. And for the last like 2 years, I became pretty frustrated at the state of online communication, especially with
Mhm.
my studying of localism. And I was like, what do we have on a local in the local digital landscape?
Mhm.
Um, because societies and cities live and die on communication.
Yeah.
And so we have Nextdoor,
Mhm.
which pockets people in the neighborhoods. You have Meetup,
Yep.
which hasn't innovated in the last 5 years. You have dating apps
Mhm.
connecting people one on one. And then you have messaging platforms like GroupMe, WhatsApp, and that's about it. Like for the
Right.
whole local digital landscape, it's super
Mhm.
bleak. And we've spent so much time and energy and money in tech innovating for AI and to become multiplanetary and all these other things, but we haven't spent enough time and focus on how can we provide tools and resources to community builders and to help connect things more on a local level, people in
Mhm.
proximity. And so
Yeah.
for about a year, I was like, somebody's got to pioneer the local digital landscape. And I had
Mhm.
even written Elon a letter when he bought Twitter,
Mhm.
um, and was like, here's some suggested changes that you can make to help connect people in proximity. Didn't hear back, obviously.
Yeah.
But after like a year of waiting, I was like, I know exactly what it needs to look like, how it needs to function. So I designed it out in April of 24, called it Local,
Mhm.
LOCL.
Mhm.
And I showed it to a friend of mine who was extremely successful in tech. And he was like, dude, this is it.
Mhm.
I'd love to invest and I'd love to advise you in this.
Mhm.
And so that's when I was like, it was kind of like my anthropology moment where I
Yeah.
was like, wow, like I got this much excitement and
Yeah.
backing
Yeah.
in these early stages of what was just a concept and something
Mhm.
that I mapped out on a napkin, you
Uh-huh.
know?
Wow.
And so shortly after that, I heard a rumor that one of the head software engineers for Snapchat wanted to leave Snap and join kind of the next wave of things.
Yeah.
And so I flew out, had dinner with him, showed
Mhm.
him local, and
Yeah.
he was like, "I'm in. I'll
Oh
help you
my
develop the
gosh.
app. And when you raise a seed round, I'd love to join your team full time." And so within the month of May last year, I got backed and found a great
Mhm.
developer,
Mhm.
and I was off to the races.
Yeah.
And the concept of local is you can create or join any digital community within a 50-mile radius. And digital communities are not nuanced. We have like Facebook groups,
Mhm.
Reddit, Discord, WhatsApp, but nobody's taken digital communities and geofence them. And when you do that, um, every community on local is an extension of a real community.
Yeah.
And so there's millions of micro communities and pro social clubs right now, like mom groups, runners clubs, nonprofits, churches,
Mhm.
that when you ask them, like, what are you using to communicate? They'll say email, WhatsApp, and text threads with 30 people in them.
Right.
And these are some of the most brilliant solutionists and community builders in the United States.
Mhm.
That's most of my network.
Right.
So when I started asking them, I was like, wow, they really don't have a solution to streamline communication for their community and
Mhm.
also become discoverable to everyone within a 50-mile radius from where they live. And so that's what we'll ultimately solve with local is it's going to be a really great way to streamline communication for your community and
Mhm.
help you become discoverable and get free amazing exposure for your community that you're trying to build or have been building.
Mhm. That I love that, and it sounds like that will clean up a lot of fake users or out like users that really aren't from the area, which can flood local groups so easily on Facebook. I mean, this will clean up a lot of that. They'll be real people,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The problem with digital communities historically existing on local
Mhm.
platforms
Yeah.
is you have a lot of people. Most of the digital communities that exist online right now are
Mhm.
people that how will never meet in real life,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
that opens up the door for a lot of scammers
Mhm.
or a lot of unnecessary
Mhm.
hate online.
Mhm.
A lot of people with opinions that aren't held to accountability.
Mhm.
Um, but the truth is, like,
Mm.
all online communication over this next decade will move to digital communities.
Mhm.
And in order for that to truly be effective, you have to have some aspect of proximity to that and have
Right.
some aspect of connection to real community.
Mhm. Yeah. And there is because I have the app, I downloaded it. It is amazing, and I know there's upcoming features that it will just be built out from there. But talk a little bit about who can create these communities and what are they like, and can they be anything?
Yeah, so anybody can create a
Hmm.
community on local.
Hmm.
It takes like 2 minutes. And once you create a community, I mean, the most effective communities on the platform will be formerly communities that have already been building, they already have
Hmm.
relationships. But you can create a community on there, invite your people into it,
Hmm.
and then you're not competing with you know, algorithms that are biased. Like you're able to
Hmm.
communicate directly to your people
Right.
and there won't ever be advertising on the platform. So
Wow.
you're not competing with the noise of social media. You're not
Hmm.
competing with ads in your feed and you're able to just communicate with a group of people to the where in the early stages it's going to feel pretty anticlimactic because you're used to
Hmm.
this like massive energy of noise and ads and
Hmm.
things getting thrown your way. But now it's like you strip all that away and you can just communicate to your group of people that you have a
Yeah.
similar shared interest with,
Hmm.
um, and streamline
Yeah.
communication.
Yeah. True networking.
Yeah.
I love that. What have you done when jumping into just a completely foreign project to you? How did you start learning about tech and apps and development? Did you just dive in? Did you have a period where where you researched? What was that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, clearly, I'm known for a blanket company, so my background's not tech, but I did spend a lot of time studying technology and specifically social networks because that's how I
Mhm.
grew up, but then that's how I had to build my brand, like
Right.
Sackcloth. So I had to find, we not only when we got featured on Instagram back in 2014,
Mhm.
it opened up this like world of opportunity to work with creatives and influencers.
Mhm.
And so Sackcloth was one of very few brands that kind of helped pioneer a lot of the marketing strategies behind social media. And
Right.
so we were like experimenting with giveaways and different guerrilla marketing tactics through social media when the algorithms were a little bit more favorable for brands and
Mhm.
creatives. Um, and to exist for 10 years as a company, specifically like where you're selling most of your product online, you have to continue to reinvent yourself. Like there's new shifts in the social landscape online that you have to continually stay updated and innovative on
Mhm.
your marketing approaches.
Right.
Um, and so I've always had a good intuition and a good understanding of where things were going to go and how they were going to evolve based on
Mhm.
trends or yeah, just spending a lot of time on in these social networks online.
Mhm.
And so when I started to feel like, when Facebook started to fizzle out because they
Mhm.
integrated a bunch of advertising and stuff, and then we all jumped to Instagram.
Right.
And when you started to feel like, wow, Instagram's starting to lose a little bit of its relevancy,
Mhm.
and you have to pay to get exposure on Instagram now.
Right.
Similar, I mean, we all saw it coming because that's exactly what Meta did with Facebook. So we knew that there was going to be a rug pull at some point down the road with Instagram where eventually we would be, lose engagement and have to pay for that engagement because they were going to monetize off of our communities for
Mhm.
advertising money. So we all knew it was coming, but when that happened, there was no place to jump from Instagram, and it just started to like really dive into doom scrolling content,
Mhm.
and Instagram started competing with Snapchat with stories, and then they started competing with TikTok, and then it just started getting like, this isn't about connection anymore.
Right.
Like it's about entertainment at best, where you can
Right.
watch a bunch of videos, and but it's mostly like just mindless consumption of endless amounts of
Yeah.
content while they're profiting off of people just
Mm.
scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. So it was no
Yeah.
longer about community and connection anymore.
Right.
So when I started to feel that, I was like, where are
Mhm.
we going to jump to next? And that's where I started to get a good idea that all online communication is going to move to digital communities. So I,
Mhm.
at least my whole journey was kind of following the trend of where is online communication going, partly because I needed my brand to survive. But then it became a much bigger missional thing for me where I'm like,
Right.
now I want society to survive.
Right.
Um, and in order to do that, we have to pioneer kind of a new way of communication online that's actually going to connect people and bring people together in a really real way. So
Right.
my background is building teams, taking a product to market,
Mhm.
and not tech. But I knew that if I can build and construct a really strong, team,
Mhm.
that they can take care of the technology and
Right.
I can help with the vision of how the communication works. But then my job is to stay in my lane, which is to take a product to market, which is
Mhm.
what I'll do.
Right. I think I know that what you have created and are creating is going to make such a difference because I'm sure we both know the mental health and the suicide and the depression and anxiety stats that happened once social media turned into what it is.
Yeah.
And because your app will battle that will make such a huge difference in the society and in what happened with homelessness and all that you are doing for that. I mean, this will really start working at the very beginning of someone's lives because they're starting so early online. And if you're battling mental health and anxiety and depression, I mean, that's going to be have such a ripple effect in the world.
Yeah. You can see
Mm-hmm.
the parallel rise of anxiety and social media kind of
Yep.
like going up with one another,
Right.
and it makes sense. I mean,
Yeah.
we became more disconnected, we became more
Mm-hmm.
isolated. We're consuming an overbearing amount of content and information
Mm-hmm.
that we were never created to be able to intake that amount of information.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I'm a huge fan of local media.
Right.
We've lost local media over the years because big eats small in
Mhm.
capitalism.
Mhm.
And so big have eaten small for so long that it's left our local economies and our local communities fragmented. And we
Yeah.
are in the fight for the future of human connection and community. right now,
Mhm.
more than ever.
Yes.
And I think we have about a 2-year window to make some aspect of correction in tech before it is too late.
Mhm.
So this is
Yeah.
very missional for me, where we have a window of time where the
Mhm.
people still get to decide, not the tech elite, where the future of society is going.
Mhm.
And it can't be we need to become anti-technology.
Right.
It's we need to utilize technology and we need to be pro-human.
Mhm.
And so that's why this is very missional for me, is I'm like entering into my second half of my life and
Mhm.
career, and being like, what can I do to help make the most impact? And I believe it's to utilize technology to bring people together over this next decade.
Yeah. That's absolutely amazing because the way things used to be, were all fine and good, but we're in 2025.
Yeah,
It can't go totally back to the way it used to be, when we were kids growing up and everything.
exactly.
But some of those fundamental, just beautiful things with connection and without, doom scrolling. I mean, you're bringing elements of that back, and I think that's amazing.
Yeah, the biggest issue that we're going to be battling in
Mhm.
this next few years is we are dealing with a society of addicts.
Mhm.
We have become addicted to
Mhm.
technology.
Right.
And partly because these large tech companies have used scientific method to get people to become addicted to their product so that
Mhm.
they can monetize off of our attention. Um, and so in order to break this now issue that we're dealing with a society of addicts, community is one of the most effective antidotes
Mhm.
to addiction. And so really the only hope that we have in the next few years is to bring
Mhm.
back a sense of community in in a time where we have increasingly become addicted to
Mhm.
something that is not healthy for us. Um, so that's what we're up against.
Right. What advice, because everybody listening to this, they're just, their minds are going to be blown a little bit because you're doing something that's against the grain and you're doing something that isn't, you're not just trying to monetize off of addiction, essentially. What advice would you give a business owner that is deciding if going against the grain is something that can even be done? Any advice there?
Well, the practical advice, and this is whether
Mm-hmm.
local existed or not, is that the companies in the future, if they don't build community, if they don't have a sense of community,
Mm-hmm.
they will not survive.
Right.
Like company, like having a following now
Mm-hmm.
in the next few years will be absolutely meaningless.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have community. You have to have, and how I would define community is you have to have clear values
Mm-hmm.
of what you're actually wanting to build community around.
Mm-hmm.
You have to, as a community builder, understand what type of value am I bringing people to
Mm-hmm.
make them want to be a part of my community.
Right.
And then the third is, as a community builder, asking the question, how can I open up the door to allow people to participate and to bring value to
Mm,
the overall community?
yeah.
So defining values, how
Mhm.
do I bring value as a community builder?
Mhm.
And how am I opening the door for others to bring value?
Yeah.
And that's how we build strong, thriving communities. And the businesses that can't figure out how to build community and
Mhm.
they're only focused on sales or they're only focused on following, they won't survive. It's not
Right.
sustainable.
Right.
Community
Absolutely.
community will take precedent over
Mhm.
content in this next decade. Right now, content creators are the influencers.
Mhm.
This next decade, community will be king, and
Yeah.
community builders will be the new influencers.
Mhm.
So, if you want to have some aspect of influence, if you want to have a brand or a company that's going to exist and be sustainable over this next decade, you need
Mhm.
to start asking the question, how can I build a community?
Right. Yeah. That's so good, and that's you're such a thought leader, and I think that's absolutely amazing. What in the app, you're going to have other functions, and I think this is so important for the business owners that are listening to this because they can leverage your app to in their business, in their community, with those nearby to them. but what are some of the other functions that will be getting rolled out soon?
Yeah, so as far as like the actual communities
Mhm.
on the app themselves, you have the main feed where
Mhm.
anybody in the community can post
Mhm.
and communicate. You have media inside of a community which stores all the photos and videos of the
Mhm.
community. You have the members where you can see every person in the community. Soon we'll be adding a thing called circles where you can
Mhm.
create groups within a community. So kind of like Slack channels.
Uh-huh.
You can create subcategory conversations inside of a
Mhm.
community. And then within the next like 2 months or so, we'll launch events. And
Awesome.
so you're going to be able to see every event that's popping up all over your city. And this will
Mhm.
quickly compete with Eventbrite, Luma, because right now you have to create an Eventbrite page or a Luma link, and you still have to be like, I got to figure out how to promote it now.
Right?
Like you just create an event and you have to figure out how to get it out there.
Yeah.
On local, you'll be able to create an event, and at the end of the event creation process, it will say, is this event in collaboration with any communities? And you can
Mhm.
add 5 different communities on the platform. It sends a notification to the community leader.
Man,
If they accept it, the event gets added to their community page and notifies every member in that community. So we've
that
never
is
had
awesome.
intentional promotion for events.
Right.
And you're going to see this ecosystem online not only populate a bunch of communities all over, but when events start
Mhm.
to pop up onto the platform, the events can strategically be promoted to these different communities, really
Mhm.
streamlined.
Right. And now the other aspect that social media platforms can have are the local marketplace and a few other functions.
Yeah.
Is that in the future at all for local?
Yeah, the hope is within the first 12 months, will allow any individual or community list products in their profiles
Mm-hmm.
and list their products under
Neat.
shop local.
Yeah.
So it'll be a citywide marketplace.
Yeah.
So that's where we'll compete against Facebook Marketplace,
Right.
Craigslist, Etsy, but individuals or communities can add products on their profiles, and you're going to be able to shop any product in your city. And so the way that we monetize as a company is we'll take a fee for every financial exchange on the app.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So whether you're making a donation to a nonprofit, which we'll eventually add on,
Mhm.
booking any event, booking any service, or purchasing any product, I'm calling it the local exchange, where there will be so much financial exchange that happens on the product that
Mhm.
local will have an opportunity to be one of the first super apps in the United States, similar to what WeChat is for China.
Yeah. That is so, and I'm excited to see the partnership with nonprofit. I mean, that's I know in the community I live in, it's so huge, it's so amazing, and that actually is again making such a difference in the world and the community. So that will be
Yeah,
huge.
it's been an issue for many, many
Yeah.
years. I tried to solve it back in 2020. I launched a website called Love Your City, and you could
Hmm.
search your city and see all the nonprofits in your community and donate to them or fill out a volunteer form. But
Hmm.
it didn't stick because there was no communication aspect to it. It was
Hmm.
just a database.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
what we need is, and what I'm going to attempt again is allowing nonprofits to add a donate button where people can donate directly to their nonprofit organization,
Hmm.
and we won't take a fee for that as a company. But it will hopefully streamline people's ability to find what's happening in my area, what organizations can they give to, and give and keep their
Mm.
resources locally. Because when a disaster hits or when you're in a place where you can give back, it's easy to just Google something and give money to the Red Cross or some of these other larger organizations. But the problem with that is you're ejecting resources out of your community.
Right.
And if you're a mid-sized or small community, those resources aren't coming back.
Hmm.
So a big thing that we'll be focusing on over this next decade is how can we keep resources in local communities as possible
Hmm.
to help fuel and fund local economies again,
Hmm.
which we've gotten away from.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's amazing and so important and really contributes to your mission here with this app. What's maybe a challenge that you faced as you were in this process, and what did it look like to overcome that, or have you yet?
Yeah,
Yeah.
haven't really yet. I
Mhm.
mean, that's all perspective
Yeah.
because, we've had along the last 12 months as we were developing the app, some changes of like developers falling off and
Mhm.
switching out. And, as we talked as a team and I talked with my project manager, things that normally would be stressful in the kind of scenario, I was like, you know, I've had product stuck on the Atlantic.
Mhm.
You know, I've had $2 million purchase orders pulled from me. So I've been like 10 years of running a product company. Like you go through some war stories where now I'm getting into tech and I'm like,
Right.
we'll have some major monumental obstacles and challenges and battles.
Mhm.
But up till now, it's like, I'm pretty calloused at this point when it
Right.
comes to pivoting and
Mhm.
making changes and things like that. So,
Exactly.
yeah, I feel like, yes, I'm new into tech and I'm going to need to earn my stripes.
Mm.
But from a shock factor, changes and all that, I've been through worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's encouraging for the listeners of this podcast, because not to shy away from when those things happen, but just to keep doing it again and again. And you're, a great inspiration for what you can handle. You can handle big obstacles with those reps and make a bigger impact in the world. So, yeah, so that's great. Before we wrap up, I would love, those listening to find out how they can get involved in local. Is it available right now? Because this is something so important for our communities.
Yeah. We just went live 3 weeks ago as
Hmm.
of today when we're recording.
Right.
So local's available on the App Store and Google Play.
Hmm.
Um, and it's basically, we haven't done any public promotion yet. Um, it's been all word of mouth, but we've had
Yeah.
800 downloads
Wow.
and over 160 communities created on the platform and like 1,600 people in like total members in communities.
Hmm.
So it's
Wow.
been really cool to see the organic word of mouth growth in the early stages. And we haven't
Wow.
publicly promoted it yet and won't until, you know, certain things come out like this, or,
Hmm.
I'll really be pushing it for the first time publicly middle of May, late May.
Hmm.
Um, to a lot of people. But these first phases, we're just gathering feedback, fixing a lot of bug issues,
Hmm.
cleaning up notifications, all that kind of thing. Um, but yeah, it's available on the App Store. And if you want to be an
Yeah.
early adopter, knowing that the app will look significantly different
Hmm.
a month to 2 months from now,
Yeah.
and you want to just kind of mess around on it, like that's where it's at.
Yeah. Love it. I've already been, and I think it's great. So I'm excited to
Yeah,
see what
thank
else
you.
happens.
Yeah, yeah.
But man, thank you so much for being here
Yeah, thanks for
today.
having me.
This is so excited, and I'm just really looking forward to being involved. So,
Yeah, thanks
all
for having me.
right. Well, thank you, SMI Real Estate and Saltwater Wellness, for sponsoring this episode.